Step away from the vehicle. This is my car. I'm in my garage. What's going on? I said step away. Put your hands where I can see them. Officer, I live here. This is my house. I just pulled into my garage. Mom, we received a report of a stolen vehicle at this address. I need to see identification immediately. A stolen vehicle. This is my car. My registration is in the glove compartment. My FBI credentials are in my purse. FBI, right, and I'm the director. Step out of the vehicle now. Officer, I'm Special Agent Rachel Morgan, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm the Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigative Division. You need to verify this before you make a mistake you can't undo. I'm not verifying anything. You're under arrest for vehicle theft and resisting an officer. Resisting? I'm sitting in my car in my own garage. You just threatened to arrest the third-ranking official in the FBI's investigative branch. Officer Derek Mills had been with the Oakland Police Department for 14 months when he made an arrest that would end his career before it truly began and cost the city $6.8 million. He was 26 years old, fresh out of the academy with minimal field experience, but apparently convinced that his instincts about criminal activity were more reliable than the explanations of the people he encountered. One Tuesday evening in a quiet residential neighborhood, he responded to a suspicious vehicle report and found Special Agent Rachel Morgan sitting in her own car in her own garage. What Mills did next, refusing to verify her FBI credentials, ignoring her explanation that she lived at the address, and arresting her while she sat behind the wheel of her personally owned vehicle, would become a federal training case on how rookie officers with inadequate supervision create constitutional violations that destroy public trust. His body cam recorded everything. Garage security cameras captured it all, and his department's failure to properly train and supervise a probationary officer would transform one wrongful arrest into a $7 million settlement that forced the city to overhaul its entire field training program. A black woman in her early 40s, Special Agent Rachel Morgan, was sitting in the driver's seat of her silver Honda Accord inside her attached-to-car garage, her finger on the button to close the garage door after pulling in from work. Her FBI credentials were in her purse on the passenger seat. Her service weapon was secured in the center console. Her work laptop and files sat in the back seat. No stolen vehicle, no criminal activity, no suspicious behavior, just a federal agent arriving home after a 12-hour shift at FBI headquarters. But Officer Mills saw her through a lens so clouded by inexperience and racial assumptions that he couldn't process a black woman in a middle-class neighborhood as someone who belonged there. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Oakwood Estates sits in the hills above downtown Oakland, a neighborhood of modest single-family homes built in the 1970s, where properties range from $400,000 to $600,000. The streets wind upward through tree-covered slopes. Ranch-style and split-level homes sit on quarter-acre lots. The neighborhood is economically diverse, racially mixed, with black families, white families, Asian families, and Latino families living side by side. Crime rates are low. Police presence is minimal except for occasional patrol cars checking parked vehicles and responding to alarm calls. It's the kind of neighborhood where people work full-time jobs, maintain their properties, and mostly keep to themselves. It was 6:35 in the evening on a Tuesday in October. The sun had set 20 minutes earlier. Streetlights cast yellow pools of light along the curved roads. Several houses had porch lights on. A few residents were visible through windows, having dinner or watching television. Normal weeknight activity in a working-class neighborhood. Special Agent Rachel Morgan had lived at 2847 Hillside Terrace for 9 years. She had bought the 3-bedroom ranch house when she transferred to the San Francisco field office from FBI headquarters in Washington. Her neighbors knew her by sight, if not by name. They knew she worked for the federal government. They knew she kept odd hours and sometimes left for days at a time when cases required travel. She wasn't particularly social. The demands of her job left little time for neighborhood gatherings, but she was a quiet, respectful neighbor who maintained her property and caused no problems. That Tuesday evening, Morgan had worked a 14-hour day coordinating a multi-state investigation into a human trafficking network. She was exhausted, running on coffee and determination. She had stopped for takeout on the way home, then driven up the winding streets to her house, pulled into her driveway, and used her garage door opener to raise the door. She had pulled her car inside, put it in park, and was about to press the button to close the garage door when she saw headlights behind her and heard a voice shouting commands. Special Agent Rachel Morgan had been with the FBI for 18 years. 18 years working her way from surveillance teams to major case squads to supervisory positions that put her in charge of some of the Bureau's most complex investigations. She was the Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigative Division, the third-ranking position in the FBI's investigative hierarchy, overseeing all major criminal investigations including organized crime, violent crime, public corruption, and civil rights violations. Her division employed over 8,000 agents and professional staff. She supervised investigations in all 50 states and multiple foreign countries. She personally briefed the FBI director weekly on high-profile cases and emerging threats. Federal prosecutors sought her approval before filing charges in sensitive cases. Defense attorneys knew her reputation for thorough investigations that survived appellate scrutiny. State and local police chiefs respected her expertise in complex investigations. She had built a career on precision, integrity, and an absolute commitment to constitutional policing. Morgan had graduated from Princeton University with a degree in criminology and Georgetown Law School, where she had been on the law review and graduated with honors. She had joined the FBI immediately after law school, going through training at Quantico and starting as a field agent in the Baltimore office. She had worked violent crime cases, gang investigations, and public corruption prosecutions. She had been promoted to supervisory special agent at 32, one of the youngest agents ever selected for squad supervisor. She had led task forces involving multiple agencies, coordinated with international law enforcement on transnational cases, and testified before Congress on FBI investigative priorities. She had received the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service 3 times. She had been named to the FBI Director's Advisory Board. She had trained thousands of agents on investigative techniques and constitutional limitations on law enforcement powers. Her expertise was sought by police departments across the country trying to improve their investigations while respecting civil rights. At 43 years old, Rachel Morgan was exactly where she had worked 2 decades to be, respected throughout law enforcement, trusted with the most sensitive investigations, and positioned to shape how the FBI approached criminal cases in an era of increased scrutiny on police conduct. She was divorced, no children. Her career had consumed most of her adult life. She lived simply, drove a modest car, and spent her limited free time hiking and reading. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't seeking recognition. She was an investigator who believed in following evidence wherever it led and holding everyone, including law enforcement, accountable to the Constitution. That Tuesday evening, Morgan had finally left the office at 6:15 after a video conference with field offices in Los Angeles, Miami, and New York about coordinating arrests in the trafficking investigation. She had stopped at a Thai restaurant near her house for takeout, ordered pad Thai and spring rolls, and driven the final 10 minutes to her home. She had pulled into her driveway at 6:33, pressed the garage door opener clip to her sun visor, and pulled into the left bay of her 2-car garage. The right bay held storage boxes and yard equipment she rarely used. She had put the car in park, gathered her purse from the passenger seat, and was reaching for the takeout bag when she noticed flashing red and blue lights reflecting off her garage walls. She looked in her rearview mirror and saw a police car blocking her driveway, a uniformed officer getting out with his hand on his weapon. Her first thought was concern that something had happened in the neighborhood. Her second thought, based on 18 years of experience dealing with police misconduct cases, was that she might be the target. And that second thought proved correct. Derek Mills was 26 years old. He had graduated from the police academy 13 months earlier and been assigned to evening patrol in Oakland's Hills neighborhoods. He was enthusiastic, eager to prove himself, and convinced that his academy training had prepared him for every situation he would encounter. He wasn't experienced enough to understand how much he didn't know. His field training officer had noted in evaluation reports that Mills was aggressive in his approach to suspects, quick to assume criminal activity, and resistant to slowing down and gathering information before acting. Those concerns had been documented, but Mills had passed his probationary training and been released for solo patrol after the standard 6-month training period. In 14 months, Mills had already generated 5 complaints. 5 complaints in just over a year, a rate that would typically trigger intensive supervision and additional training. 4 of the complaints involved allegations of excessive force, unlawful detention, or harassment of people of color. 1 had been sustained, resulting in a written counseling that Mills signed but clearly didn't take seriously. The other four were still under investigation or had been closed as not sustained because Mills was still in his probationary period and supervisors were reluctant to end his career before giving him time to improve. Mills had a developing pattern. He made assumptions about criminal activity based on limited information, acted on those assumptions without verifying basic facts, and escalated encounters when people questioned his authority. A Latino man sitting in a parked car outside an apartment building. Mills approached, demanded identification, and ordered him out of the vehicle. The man was waiting for his wife to finish her nursing shift. He showed Mills his registration proving the car was his. Mills detained him for 30 minutes anyway, claiming the vehicle matched a stolen vehicle report. No such report existed. The complaint was sustained. Mills received written counseling. A black teenager walking through a grocery store parking lot. Mills stopped him, searched his backpack without consent, and accused him of shoplifting. The teenager had receipts for everything in the backpack. No store employee had reported any theft. The complaint was under investigation. An Asian woman taking photographs in a public park. Mills approached and questioned whether she had permission to be there. The park was public. No permission was required. Mills demanded to see her identification and ran her name for warrants. The complaint was under investigation. The pattern was forming quickly. Mills saw people of color in situations he deemed unusual and assumed criminal activity. He acted on those assumptions without gathering information, without asking questions, without considering innocent explanations. His academy training had emphasized officer safety and command presence, but had failed to adequately train him on constitutional limits, de-escalation, and the importance of verifying facts before making stops or arrests. And his supervisors, overwhelmed with managing multiple rookie officers, had failed to provide the close oversight Mills desperately needed. That Tuesday at 6:28, Mills was on patrol when he received a call from dispatch. Report of suspicious vehicle, 2847 Hillside Terrace. Caller states unknown person in dark sedan pulled into garage at that address. Homeowner is reportedly a single woman who drives a light-colored vehicle. Possible burglary in progress. Mills acknowledged the call and drove toward Hillside Terrace. In his mind, the scenario was clear. Burglar using garage access to enter home. Homeowner potentially in danger. He needed to respond quickly and assertively. He didn't question why a burglar would use the garage door opener. He didn't wonder why someone breaking into a house would do so while it was still light outside. He didn't consider asking dispatch for additional information about the homeowner or the vehicle. He just responded with lights and siren, determined to catch a burglar in the act. At 6:35, Mills pulled up to 2847 Hillside Terrace. He saw the garage door was open and a dark-colored Honda Accord was inside with someone in the driver's seat. In Mills's mind, that confirmed the call. Burglar in the garage, probably trying to steal items before the homeowner returned. He pulled into the driveway, blocking the garage, activated his overhead lights, and jumped out of his patrol car with his hand on his weapon. His body cam was recording. The garage security camera was recording. A neighbor across the street noticed the police car and started watching from his window. Everything that happened next would be witnessed and documented. Mills rushed toward the garage, shouting commands at the figure in the driver's seat. Do you think officers should complete at least 2 years of supervised patrol before being allowed to work solo? Drop your answer below. Rachel Morgan was reaching for her takeout bag when she heard shouting behind her. She looked in her rearview mirror and saw a police officer approaching her car rapidly with his hand on his weapon. Her training kicked in immediately. Hands visible, slow movements, clear communication. She had investigated enough officer-involved shootings to know how quickly these situations could turn deadly. Step away from the vehicle. Morgan kept her hands on the steering wheel where the officer could see them. This is my car. I'm in my garage. What's going on? Mills stopped at the rear of the vehicle, using it as cover. I said step away. Put your hands where I can see them. My hands are on the steering wheel, Morgan said calmly. Officer, I live here. This is my house. I just pulled into my garage. Mom, we received a report of a stolen vehicle at this address. I need to see identification immediately. Morgan felt her stomach tighten. She had dealt with variations of this scenario dozens of times, but always as the investigator reviewing the case afterward, never as the person being detained. A stolen vehicle. This is my car. My registration is in the glove compartment. My FBI credentials are in my purse on the passenger seat. I'm Special Agent Rachel Morgan, FBI. I can show you my credentials if you'll allow me to reach for my purse. Mills's expression hardened. FBI. Right. And I'm the director. Step out of the vehicle now. This is where inexperience becomes dangerous. Officer Mills had responded to a call about a suspicious vehicle. When he arrived and saw someone he didn't expect, a black woman in a middle-class neighborhood, his mind processed that as confirmation of criminal activity. When she identified herself as an FBI agent, he didn't hear authority or credentials. He heard someone lying to avoid arrest. His academy training had taught him to trust his instincts and maintain command presence. But no one had adequately trained him on what to do when his instincts were wrong. Officer Morgan kept her voice professional but firm. "I'm Special Agent Rachel Morgan, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm the Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigative Division. You need to verify this information before you make a decision you cannot undo. I'm going to slowly reach for my purse to show you my credentials. I'm also armed. My service weapon is secured in the center console, and I'm informing you of that right now. Don't reach for anything. Keep your hands on the wheel." "Then how do you want me to show you my credentials? You're not showing me anything. You're under arrest." Morgan couldn't believe what she was hearing. "For what?" "Sitting in my own car in my own garage. For vehicle theft and resisting an officer." "Resisting? I haven't moved. I've kept my hands visible the entire time. I've offered to provide identification." "Officer, I need to see your badge number, and I need you to call your supervisor right now. Get out of the car with your hands up." "Nah." Morgan knew she had limited options. She could continue asserting her rights and risk this rookie officer interpreting her refusal as resistance. She could comply and document everything for the lawsuit she knew was coming. Or she could hope that a supervisor would arrive and recognize the mistake before it escalated further. She chose compliance with clear documentation. "Officer, I'm complying under protest. I'm opening my car door slowly with my left hand. My right hand is staying visible. I am Special Agent Rachel Morgan, FBI. This is my home. This is my vehicle. You are making an unlawful arrest that is being recorded by your body cam and my garage security camera." Mills stepped back slightly as Morgan opened the door. The neighbor across the street had come out onto his porch watching. Another neighbor 2 houses down had noticed the police lights and was standing at the end of her driveway. Morgan stepped out of the car, hands raised to shoulder height, moving deliberately and slowly. She wore dark slacks and a blazer over a white blouse, professional clothing appropriate for a senior FBI official. Her credentials case was visible in her open purse on the passenger seat. Her FBI parking placard hung from the rearview mirror. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." "Officer Mills," Morgan said as she turned slowly, "you are arresting a federal agent without probable cause. You have not verified a single fact. You have not confirmed the vehicle is stolen. You have not checked my identification. You have not called your supervisor. This is a career-ending mistake, and you're making it in front of witnesses with cameras." Mills pulled out his handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." "I know my rights, officer. I've been reading suspects their rights for 18 years. The question is whether you know the law you're sworn to enforce." Mills grabbed Morgan's wrist and pulled her arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut, tighter than necessary. Morgan winced but said nothing. She wouldn't give him any excuse to claim she resisted. The neighbor across the street called out, "Officer, that's Agent Morgan. She's FBI. She lives there. I've been her neighbor for 6 years." Mills ignored him. He guided Morgan toward his patrol car. She was still in her work clothes, standing in her own garage, handcuffed like a criminal while her takeout dinner sat cooling in her car. Another neighbor had come outside, phone in hand, recording. Mills opened the back door of his patrol car and helped Morgan inside. She sat in the back seat, hands cuffed behind her, watching her garage and her house recede as Mills closed the door. Before Mills could get into the driver's seat, a second patrol car pulled up. Sergeant Jennifer Wu, a 16-year veteran who had been monitoring radio traffic and heard Mills's traffic stop call at an address she recognized. Wu knew Rachel Morgan. They had worked together on a joint FBI Oakland PD task force investigating a series of armed robberies. Wu had been in Morgan's office at the FBI field office a dozen times. She had Morgan's cell phone number in her contacts. Wu got out of her car and walked directly to Mills with an expression that mixed confusion and growing alarm. "Mills, what's going on here?" Mills gestured toward his patrol car. "Vehicle theft suspect. Detained at 2847 Hillside Terrace based on suspicious vehicle report." Wu looked toward the patrol car and saw Morgan sitting in the back seat through the window. Her face went pale. "Mills, that's Special Agent Rachel Morgan, FBI. She's the Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigative Division. She lives at this address. That's her house. That's her car. And you just arrested one of the highest-ranking FBI officials in Northern California." Mills's confident expression crumbled. "She said she was FBI, but I thought..." "You thought what?" "That someone would lie about being a senior FBI official. Did you verify anything before you arrested her? Did you check her credentials? Did you run the vehicle registration? Did you call me? No, Sergeant, Wu cut him off. Uncouth her right now. Mills walked to the patrol car on shaking legs and opened the door. Morgan stepped out, turned around, and Mills unlocked the handcuffs. Deep red marks were visible on both wrists where the metal had pressed into her skin. Wu approached Morgan with an expression of genuine distress. Agent Morgan, I am so sorry. This should never have happened. Sergeant Wu, Morgan's voice was controlled but carried an edge like a blade. Officer Mills responded to a call about a suspicious vehicle. When he arrived, I identified myself as FBI and offered to show him my credentials. He refused. I told him this was my home and my vehicle. He refused to verify. My neighbors confirmed I lived here. He arrested me anyway. And now I'm standing in my own driveway in handcuffs because a rookie officer with inadequate training and even worse judgment decided a black woman couldn't possibly own a home in this neighborhood. Wu turned to Mills, her voice dropping to something cold and final. Give me your handcuffs, your radio, and your badge. You're done for the night. Return to the station immediately and do not make any statements until you speak with a union representative and an attorney. Do you understand? Sergeant, I was just following. Do you understand? Mills nodded mutely. He handed over his equipment and walked to his patrol car. Wu called for another unit to respond and transport Mills's vehicle back to the station. She turned back to Morgan. Agent Morgan, I'll personally ensure every piece of footage is preserved. I know you know the process, but I want to be clear that the department will investigate this fully. Morgan nodded. I'll be filing a formal complaint tomorrow. And Sergeant Wu, I'm not doing this just for myself. I'm doing this for every black person in Oakland who gets stopped, questioned, and arrested because some officer decides they don't belong. Officer Mills has been on the force 14 months, and he already has 5 complaints. How many more before someone intervenes? Wu had no good answer. She knew Mills's record. She knew he should have had closer supervision. She knew the department had failed. Should officers with 3 or more complaints in their first year face mandatory additional training or removal from patrol? Let me know what you think. Within 12 hours, the story had spread through law enforcement circles, then media outlets, then social media. The garage security camera footage showed everything. Officer Mills rushing toward Rachel Morgan's car with his hand on his weapon, Morgan calmly explaining she lived there and offering credentials, Mills refusing to verify anything. Morgan complying with his orders while clearly stating she was FBI, Mills handcuffing her in her own garage while neighbors watched and confirmed her identity. The bodycam footage, released after intense public pressure and a demand from the FBI director personally, confirmed what the garage video showed. No stolen vehicle, no criminal activity, no justification for the arrest. Just a black woman arriving home from work, questioned and arrested because a rookie officer made assumptions based on race and refused to verify basic facts before acting. FBI's top criminal investigator arrested in her own garage by rookie officer. Oakland cop handcuffs FBI assistant director after refusing to check her credentials. Federal agent detained at home while rookie officer ignores witnesses and evidence. The outrage was immediate, intense, and came from unexpected quarters. The FBI director issued a rare public statement condemning the arrest and announcing that the Bureau's Civil Rights Division would conduct an independent investigation into the Oakland Police Department's training and supervision practices. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opened a pattern and practice investigation into Oakland PD's handling of racial profiling complaints. Law enforcement organizations across the country, typically reluctant to criticize fellow officers, issued statements expressing concern about the lack of training and supervision that allowed a rookie officer to make such a catastrophic error. Community organizations demanded not just Mills's termination, but a complete overhaul of the department's field training program. The police union initially attempted to defend Mills, claiming he had acted reasonably based on the information provided by dispatch. That defense collapsed within hours when the dispatch audio was released showing the caller had reported only a suspicious vehicle, not a stolen vehicle, and Mills had escalated the situation entirely on his own assumptions. Mills was placed on administrative leave within 6 hours of the arrest. The department launched an internal affairs investigation. The district attorney's office began reviewing whether criminal charges for false imprisonment under color of authority were warranted. The officer who had made the initial 911 call, a neighbor who lived 3 houses away and had never met Rachel Morgan, issued a public apology stating she had called because she didn't recognize the vehicle and now realized her call was based on unfounded suspicion. Mills released no public statement. He hired a defense attorney and a labor attorney. He was advised to remain silent while the investigations proceeded. Rachel Morgan contacted the FBI's legal counsel office and private civil rights attorneys within 24 hours. This wasn't just about her individual case. This was about a training system that sent officers onto the street without adequate preparation, a supervision system that failed to identify problematic officers early, and a culture that allowed racial assumptions to override basic investigative principles. The lawsuit, filed 8 weeks later, named Officer Derek Mills individually Sergeant Jennifer Wu for supervisory failure, the Oakland Police Department, and the City of Oakland. The claims were comprehensive and legally devastating: unlawful seizure and false arrest in violation of the Fourth Amendment, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, racial profiling in violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, false imprisonment under California state law, intentional infliction of emotional distress, municipal liability for failure to adequately train and supervise probationary officers, failure to identify and remove officers demonstrating patterns of racial bias during field training, inadequate policies requiring verification of facts before arrests for serious felonies. The complaint included Mills's complete record: 5 complaints in 14 months for involving people of color, 1 sustained complaint that resulted only in counseling. The complaint included field training reports noting Mills's aggressive approach and resistance to gathering information before acting. The complaint included expert testimony on police training standards, showing that Oakland's 6-month field training period was insufficient, and its supervision of probationary officers was inadequate. The pattern showed a department that rushed officers through training, failed to provide adequate oversight, and didn't remove problematic officers until after they violated someone's constitutional rights. The city's attorneys reviewed the evidence: the garage camera showing Mills ignoring Morgan's explanations and offers of credentials, the body cam showing Mills refusing to verify basic facts, the neighbor testimony confirming Morgan's identity, the dispatch audio showing Mills had escalated the situation beyond what the call warranted, the fact that the plaintiff was a senior FBI official with impeccable credibility and 18 years of investigative experience. Their conclusion was immediate and unanimous: indefensible. The city settled within 9 months, paying $6.8 million to Special Agent Rachel Morgan. The settlement included comprehensive reforms to the department's training and supervision programs, extension of field training from 6 months to 12 months for all new officers, mandatory quarterly reviews of all probationary officers with automatic removal for any officer generating 3 or more complaints in their first year, required verification of identification and credentials before any arrest for felony offenses, body cameras that cannot be turned off during any law enforcement activity, independent review of all arrests by probationary officers within 24 hours, civilian oversight board with full access to training records and complaint files, federal monitoring of training and supervision practices for 5 years. Officer Derek Mills was terminated 11 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was direct and final. Officer Mills arrested FBI Assistant Director Rachel Morgan at her residence without probable cause, refused to verify her credentials despite multiple opportunities, ignored witness statements confirming her identity, and failed to conduct even basic investigation before making a felony arrest. Officer Mills generated 5 complaints in 14 months, demonstrating a pattern of aggressive policing without adequate investigation. His field training reports documented concerns about his approach that were not adequately addressed. His employment is terminated effective immediately. This termination is final and not subject to appeal. Mills's name was entered into the state's officer decertification database. His law enforcement career ended at 26 years old before it had truly begun. He would never work in law enforcement again in California. Should cities face financial penalties in addition to settlements when inadequate training leads to constitutional violations? Let me know in the comments. Special Agent Rachel Morgan testified at a city council hearing 14 months after the incident. The council chambers were packed with law enforcement officials, FBI agents, civil rights advocates, and Oakland residents. Her testimony was measured, precise, and carried the weight of 18 years investigating police misconduct. I've been with the FBI for 18 years. She paused, letting the room fall silent. I've investigated hundreds of cases involving law enforcement. I've worked with police departments across this country. I understand the challenges officers face, and I respect the difficulty of the job they do. Another pause. But on October 11th of last year, I experienced what thousands of Black Americans experience regularly. I was questioned, detained, and arrested for existing in a space where someone decided I didn't belong. Her voice remained professional but carried unmistakable force. I was sitting in my car in my own garage. I had just arrived home from a 14-hour shift at FBI headquarters. I identified myself as a federal agent. I offered to show credentials. I explained I lived at the address. My neighbors confirmed my identity, and Officer Mills arrested me anyway. She looked directly at the council members and the police chief sitting in the front row. Officer Mills had been on the force for 14 months. He had already generated 5 complaints in that time for involving people of color. His field training reports documented concerns about his approach, and yet he was released to patrol alone with minimal supervision. The room was completely silent. The city paid $6.8 million to settle my lawsuit. That's accountability. Officer Mills was terminated. That's consequence. But money doesn't fix the broken training system that sent him onto the street unprepared. Termination doesn't address the supervision failures that allowed his pattern to develop. One more pause, deliberate and heavy. I'm the assistant director of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division. I have credentials, authority, and resources. And even that wasn't enough to prevent my arrest. What happens to everyone else? What happens to Black residents in Oakland who don't have my position, my platform, my ability to demand change? She let the question resonate. That's what this case represents. Not just one wrongful arrest, but a systemic failure to properly train and supervise the officers we trust with the authority to deprive people of their liberty. Officer Mills didn't fail on his own. The department failed by sending him out without adequate preparation, and by not removing him after his pattern became clear. The chamber remained silent for several seconds. Then one person began clapping. Others joined. The council members looked uncomfortable. The police chief stared at his hands. They knew reforms were mandatory. They knew the FBI and Justice Department were watching. They knew Rachel Morgan had just made change inevitable. Should racial profiling arrests by probationary officers trigger automatic extension of training or removal from patrol? Drop your answer. This wasn't just about one arrest on one Tuesday evening. This was about a training system that rushed officers through academy and field training without adequately preparing them for the constitutional and practical complexities of modern policing. This was about a supervision system that failed to provide the close oversight rookie officers desperately needed. This was about a culture that valued getting officers on the street quickly over getting them on the street prepared. And this was about thousands of Black residents who face the consequences when inadequately trained officers make assumptions based on race instead of facts. Derek Mills's record told a story the department should have recognized immediately. 5 complaints in 14 months. 4 involving people of color. Field training reports noting aggressive approach and resistance to gathering information. 1 sustained complaint that resulted only in counseling instead of enhanced supervision or removal. The pattern was forming rapidly. Mills made assumptions about criminal activity, acted on those assumptions without verification, and escalated encounters when people questioned him. Every complaint should have triggered additional oversight. The sustained complaint should have resulted in extended training or removal. Instead, Mills was allowed to continue solo patrol until he arrested a senior FBI official in her own garage. Derek Mills's career is over. That's consequence. The city of Oakland paid $6.8 million. That's accountability. The department faces federal monitoring and mandatory training reforms. That's oversight. But money doesn't undo the trauma of being handcuffed in your own garage by an officer who refused to believe you belonged there. Termination doesn't restore the dignity of being arrested while your neighbors watched and your takeout dinner went cold. Reforms don't erase the message that incident sent to every Black resident of Oakland, that even FBI credentials aren't enough to protect you from an officer who has already decided you're a criminal. The real question is, what changes now? Do police departments finally extend training periods to ensure officers are actually prepared? Do they finally provide adequate supervision during those critical first years? Do they finally remove officers who generate multiple complaints before those officers violate someone's constitutional rights? Do we finally require verification of basic facts before arrests? Do we finally acknowledge that suspicious often means Black in a white neighborhood or middle-class area? Because if we don't fix the training system that sent Derek Mills onto the street after 6 months, if we don't address the supervision system that failed to recognize his pattern, then we're just waiting for the next rookie officer, the next wrongful arrest, the next victim, the next multi-million-dollar settlement. Rachel Morgan got justice because she had power, credentials, and the full weight of the FBI behind her. But justice shouldn't require that kind of institutional power. It should be guaranteed by the Constitution and enforced by properly trained officers who verify facts before they act. Comment if you believe this should be law. Officers must complete a minimum of 1 year of supervised field training and cannot work solo patrol if they generate 3 or more complaints during that training period. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability requires exposing the systems that fail, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing inadequate training, failed supervision, and the assumption that black people don't belong in spaces where they live and work. We're going to keep demanding that police departments train officers properly before giving them badges and guns. We're going to keep fighting for the FBI agents, the homeowners, the parents, and everyone who deserves to arrive home without being arrested in their own garage. This isn't just about one rookie officer or one federal agent. It's about all of us and the country we choose to accept. One where credentials and facts don't matter if your skin is the wrong color. Or one where police officers are trained to investigate before they arrest and supervise closely enough to prevent catastrophic mistakes.